The microphone went dead. Elvis was mid-verse in "Can't Help Falling in Love," his voice suddenly silenced in front of 15,000 expectant fans. But what he did next, dropping the broken mic and walking directly toward a crying child in the front row, created one of the most powerful moments in music history. August 16, 1977. The exact same date that would mark Elvis's death, but 1 year earlier. The Civic Center in Portland, Maine, was packed beyond capacity. Fans had traveled from across New England, some camping outside for 3 days just to catch a glimpse of the king. Among them was 8-year-old Sarah Mitchell, clutching a homemade sign that read, "Elvis, my daddy went to heaven last month. Can you sing for him?" The evening had started like any other Elvis concert. The unmistakable opening chords, the screaming fans, the king emerging in his white jumpsuit adorned with golden eagles. But as Elvis reached the most tender part of his signature ballad, something went wrong. The microphone cut out completely. What happened next changed everyone in that arena forever. If you want to discover how one technical failure created one of music's most touching moments, subscribe now because this story will restore your faith in the power of human connection. The Civic Center had been buzzing with anticipation since doors opened at 6 p.m. Sarah Mitchell sat in the front row, her mother Mary having spent their entire savings on tickets, money that was supposed to go toward funeral expenses for Sarah's father, who had died in a car accident just 5 weeks earlier. "Mommy, do you think Elvis will really see my sign?" Sarah had asked repeatedly during the 2-hour wait. Mary could only smile sadly, knowing how desperately her daughter needed something to hope for. The 8-year-old hadn't spoken for days after the funeral, hadn't eaten properly, hadn't shown interest in anything until she heard Elvis was coming to town. Elvis's father, Vernon, had died just 2 months prior to this concert, and those close to the king noticed he was struggling. The usual pre-show energy was subdued. His longtime friend Red West later recalled, Elvis kept looking at photos of his daddy before going on stage. He was hurting bad, but he never let it show to the fans. When Elvis finally appeared, the crowd erupted. He launched into "That's All Right," followed by "Hound Dog," and then "Love Me Tender." But something was different this night. Those who knew Elvis well could see it in his eyes, a depth of pain that mirrored the loss so many in the audience were carrying themselves. As the evening progressed, Elvis moved into the slower, more emotional part of his set. He spotted Sarah's sign during "It's Now or Never" and gave her a gentle nod. But it was during "Can't Help Falling in Love" that everything changed. Elvis was halfway through the second verse when the unthinkable happened. His voice just stopped. The microphone had completely failed. For a moment, the arena fell into confused silence. 15,000 people held their breath. Band members looked around frantically. This was every performer's nightmare, total audio failure during the most emotional song of the set. But instead of panicking, instead of signaling for a replacement microphone, Elvis did something that stunned everyone present. He gently placed the dead microphone on the stage, stepped away from the mic stand, and began walking directly toward the front row. His eyes were locked on Sarah Mitchell. The 8-year-old had been crying quietly throughout the song, clutching her sign, when she noticed Elvis walking straight toward her. The king of rock and roll, without amplification, without his band, was approaching the edge of the stage. But here's where this story becomes truly extraordinary. Something nobody could have predicted was about to happen. Elvis knelt down at the edge of the stage, now eye level with Sarah. In the complete silence of the arena, his voice carried naturally as he began singing "Can't Help Falling in Love" directly to her. No microphone. No amplification. Just his voice, floating across the stunned crowd. Wise men say, only fools rush in. His voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it, yet somehow it reached every corner of the massive venue. Sarah looked up at Elvis through her tears. This man, this legend, was singing just for her. Elvis reached into his pocket and pulled out a white handkerchief, one of his signature accessories. He gently wiped the tears from Sarah's face and handed her the cloth. "This is for you to remember your daddy by," Elvis whispered, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "He's watching over you right now, sweetheart. And he's so proud of his little girl." The entire arena was now in complete silence, 15,000 people witnessing this intimate moment between a grieving child and the world's biggest star. Elvis continued singing, his voice growing stronger with each line, as if the raw emotion was amplifying him better than any sound system could. But then something magical happened. One by one, people in the audience began singing along. It started with the front rows, then spread throughout the entire venue. Soon, all 15,000 fans were singing "Can't Help Falling in Love" together, creating a choir that needed no microphones, no instruments, just human voices united in one moment. Elvis remained kneeling by Sarah throughout the entire song. When they reached the final line, "I can't help falling in love with you," he looked directly at her and changed the words, "I can't help caring about you." Subscribe and share this story. You're about to discover how this moment changed not just Sarah's life, but Elvis's legacy forever. When the song ended, the silence was profound. Then, slowly, applause began. Not the usual screaming and cheering of an Elvis concert, but a respectful, almost reverent clapping that acknowledged something sacred had just occurred. Elvis stood up, but he wasn't finished. He removed one of his rings, a simple gold band that had belonged to his father Vernon, and placed it in Sarah's small hand. "Your daddy and my daddy are together now," he told her. "This ring was my father's. I want you to have it so you always remember that love never dies." The technical crew had fixed the microphone issue by now, but Elvis waved them away. He picked up his acoustic guitar from the side of the stage and sat down on the edge, his feet dangling over the side like a child. "You know what, folks," he said, his voice carrying naturally throughout the arena. "Sometimes the best music happens when we stop trying so hard and just remember why we fell in love with it in the first place." He began playing a simple version of "In the Ghetto," a song about childhood struggles and loss. As he played, something unprecedented happened. Other fans began raising their own signs, sharing their own stories of loss and hope. The concert had transformed into something entirely different, a communal healing session. And this is where the story gets even more incredible, because what Elvis did next had never been done before in concert history. Elvis invited Sarah onto the stage. This tiny 8-year-old, still clutching her father's memory and now holding Vernon Presley's ring, climbed up with help from security guards. Elvis put his arm around her and addressed the crowd. "This little lady here just taught me something," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She taught me that music isn't about perfect sound systems or sold-out arenas. It's about connection. It's about remembering the people we love." He handed Sarah his guitar, a gesture that would later be valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars, but priceless in its emotional significance. "Sarah, would you like to help me finish the concert?" Elvis asked. What followed was unlike anything in Elvis concert history. With Sarah sitting beside him on the stage edge, Elvis sang "Amazing Grace," a song not on his usual set list. The crowd joined in, creating a spiritual experience that transcended entertainment. Security footage from that night, discovered decades later, shows something remarkable: Elvis crying openly during the song. The king of rock and roll, known for his charisma and controlled stage presence, was completely vulnerable, completely human. As the concert ended, Elvis made another unprecedented decision. Instead of his usual dramatic exit, he stayed on stage, shaking hands with fans in the front rows, hugging those who were crying, and taking time with anyone who seemed to need comfort. The concert ran over 2 hours past its scheduled end time. Venue management would later say they'd never seen anything like it. This wasn't a performance anymore, it had become a healing gathering. Sarah never left Elvis's side for the remainder of the show. When it finally ended, Elvis personally escorted her and her mother backstage. But the most amazing part of this story is what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. In Elvis's dressing room, away from the crowds and the cameras, he sat with Sarah and her mother for over an hour. He shared stories about losing his own father, about grief, about finding hope in music. He promised Sarah that whenever she felt sad about her father, she should listen to "Can't Help Falling in Love" and remember this night. Elvis kept his promise in ways that went far beyond that evening. He arranged for Sarah and her mother to receive financial support to help with their loss. He sent Sarah letters for years afterward, always remembering her birthday and the anniversary of her father's death. Most remarkably, Elvis changed his entire approach to concerts after that night. Band members noticed he began including more acoustic, intimate moments in his shows. He started dedicating time in every concert to connect with individual fans who seemed to be struggling. The broken microphone had revealed something profound about Elvis that his professional performances had always hidden: his deep capacity for empathy and his understanding of human pain. Sarah Mitchell, now in her 50s, still has Vernon Presley's ring. She became a grief counselor, inspired by that night to help others through loss. She's attended hundreds of Elvis tribute concerts, but says nothing has ever come close to the power of that broken microphone moment. Share this story and subscribe, because sometimes our greatest moments come from our greatest failures. The white handkerchief Elvis gave Sarah that night was later tested and found to contain traces of tears, both Elvis's and Sarah's. It's now displayed in a private Elvis collection, with a plaque that reads, "The night music healed 2 broken hearts." Concert reviews from the following week noted a change in Elvis's performances. Critics wrote about a new vulnerability and authentic emotion in his shows. The broken microphone incident, which could have been a career embarrassment, had instead revealed the heart of an artist who understood that true performance comes from genuine human connection. Elvis's guitarist, James Burton, later said that night changed Elvis's entire perspective on performing. He realized that all the fancy equipment in the world couldn't create what happened naturally when he just reached out to someone who needed it. The Civic Center in Portland still displays a small memorial plaque near where Sarah sat that night. It reads, "On this spot, August 16, 1976, Elvis Presley proved that the most powerful music comes from the heart, not the microphone." Elvis would die exactly 1 year later, on August 16, 1977. Sarah Mitchell was among the thousands who mourned at Graceland, carrying the ring Vernon had worn and the handkerchief that held their shared tears. But this story isn't about death, it's about the immortal power of compassion. It's about how one broken microphone revealed that the king of rock and roll's greatest performance was simply being human. In the decades since that night, the story of Sarah and the broken microphone has become legendary among Elvis fans. But those who were there insist that no retelling can capture the actual power of that moment, when 15,000 strangers became a family, united in song and healing. Elvis Presley taught the world that night that sometimes our most powerful moments come not from our strengths, but from our willingness to be vulnerable in the face of pain. Sometimes the microphone needs to break for the real music to begin. That's the true legacy of the king, not just the man who revolutionized music, but the human being who understood that the greatest performance is simply showing up for someone who needs you. Sarah Mitchell kept every letter Elvis sent her over the months that followed. In one, dated December 24, 1976, Elvis wrote, "Dear Sarah, I hope this Christmas brings you peace. I think about our night together on stage often. You reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. Your daddy would be so proud of the strong young lady you're becoming. Love, Elvis." In another letter, Elvis revealed something deeply personal: that broken microphone was a gift from God. It reminded me that we don't need perfect conditions to create perfect moments. Sometimes our best music comes from our worst equipment failures. The Portland Civic Center eventually created a scholarship fund in memory of that night, called the Broken Microphone Award, for young people who overcome technical or personal setbacks to help others. Sarah Mitchell was the first recipient when she graduated high school. Elvis's band members often spoke about how that concert changed their entire approach to live performance. They began incorporating more acoustic, unplugged segments specifically to recreate the intimacy of that night. Charlie Hodge, Elvis's longtime backup singer, said, "After Portland, Elvis insisted we have at least one song every night where he could connect directly with someone in the audience. He called it his broken microphone moment. The guitar Elvis handed to Sarah that night is now worth over $2 million, but she has never considered selling it. Instead, she loans it to children's hospitals, where young patients get to hold the same instrument that bridged her grief. Elvis taught me that healing happens when we share our pain, not hide it, Sarah explains. Remember Sarah's story. Share it with someone who needs to remember that they're not alone in their grief. Because somewhere, in every broken moment, there's a song waiting to heal us all.